My name is Clara Whitmore, and last night, at my 18th birthday dinner, my father leaned toward me, smiling like everything was normal, and said quietly, "After this, you're going to sign the papers. Don't make a scene." I smiled. I even nodded. Then I stood up, walked upstairs, closed my bedroom door, sat down at my desk, and opened my laptop, because by that point, I already knew exactly what those papers were, and more importantly, I knew what would happen if I signed them. By morning, the house they were planning to sell, the land they had already promised, and the money they were counting on would be completely out of their reach, locked, legally untouchable, and the worst part, they wouldn't even realize it until it was too late. But to understand how it got to that point, you have to go back 6 years. Back to the first time I realized my family didn't see things the same way I did. 6 years earlier, I was 12 the first time my grandfather took me to Silver Pine Lake. He picked me up early in the morning, before anyone else in the house was awake. No explanation, just grab a jacket, we've got work to do. The drive was quiet, 40 minutes of empty roads, tall trees, and the kind of silence that makes you feel like you're leaving something behind. When we finally pulled up, I didn't say anything, because the place didn't look like much. Old cabin, faded paint, porch slightly tilted to one side. It looked like something people forgot about, but my grandfather didn't treat it that way. He turned off the engine, looked straight ahead for a second, then said, "This place matters. Not this place is valuable. Not this place is expensive. Just, it matters." I didn't fully understand what he meant. Not yet. Han Lane, the first lesson. "Grab the other end," he said, lifting a wooden fence post from the ground. I did. We spent the entire morning fixing a fence that honestly didn't look worth fixing. At least not to me. The wood was worn, the nails were rusted, the whole thing leaned like it had already given up. But he worked carefully, like every inch of it mattered. At one point he stopped and pointed to a section of wood. "Press here." I pushed my thumb into it. It sank slightly. "Feel that?" he said. I nodded. "It looks fine," he continued, "but inside it's already weak." He paused, then added, "That's how most things break." I didn't realize it then, but that was the first real lesson he ever gave me. Not about wood, about people. At home, everything looked fine too. That was the thing. From the outside, we were a normal family, 3 bedrooms, a clean kitchen, dinner at the table most nights, nothing obviously wrong, but if you paid attention, you started to notice things. My younger sister Lily had the bigger room, new furniture, fresh paint, a desk that probably cost more than everything in my room combined. Mine still had marks on the walls from the previous owners. No one ever offered to change it. No one even mentioned it. At dinner, when I spoke, people listened, but only for a moment. Then the conversation moved on. When Lily spoke, everyone stayed. Everyone reacted. Everyone cared. It wasn't loud favoritism. It was quiet, consistent, easy to ignore, unless you were the one living in it. The first conversation about the cabin. One night at dinner, my dad brought it up. "The cabin's just sitting there," he said, cutting into his steak. "Taxes, maintenance, it's a waste." My mom nodded without even looking up. "We could sell it and actually use that money." I felt something tighten in my chest. "Grandpa said it stays in the family," I said. There was a pause. Then my Uncle Victor laughed. Not loud, not mean, just dismissive. "You were a kid," he said. He didn't mean it like that. I looked at my dad, waiting for him to correct it. He didn't. He just kept eating. And just like that, the conversation moved on. Like what I said didn't matter, like it never happened. That was the moment something shifted. Because I realized they weren't talking about memories. They were talking about money. My grandfather died 2 years later. I was 14. The sky was gray that day, the kind of gray that makes everything feel heavier. The chairs at the funeral sank slightly into the wet grass. People spoke softly, but not everyone. At the reception, I saw my dad and my uncle standing off to the side, talking. Not about him, about the cabin. I didn't hear everything, just one sentence. "We should move before anything gets complicated." I didn't understand it, but I remembered it, because something about it didn't feel right. Not grief, not loss. Something else. Something planned. 2 years passed. I was 16 when my grandmother got sick. It happened fast. 1 month she was fine. The next she wasn't. The last time I saw her, she held my hand tighter than I expected. Her voice was quiet, but steady, and she said something I didn't fully understand at the time. "The cabin is yours, Clara." I blinked. "Don't let them take it." Not emotional, not dramatic, clear, direct, intentional. I nodded. "Because I didn't know what else to do. I promise." She squeezed my hand once, then let go. That was the last time I saw her. After the funeral, things changed. Not all at once, but enough to notice. My dad started calling it the family property. My uncle started coming over more often. Sometimes with folders, sometimes with a laptop, always with numbers, always with plans. I tried bringing it up once. Grandma wanted me to keep it. My mom smiled the way she always did before correcting someone. She was emotional at the end, she said. This is business, business. That word started showing up a lot. Anytime something used to mean something, they turned it into numbers. By 17, it wasn't subtle anymore. My dad started saying things like, when you turn 18, we'll handle it properly. Not if, when, like the decision was already made, and I was just part of the paperwork. Ebb taught the envelope. One afternoon, I went to the cabin alone, something I had started doing more often. It was quieter there, clearer, like I could actually think. I was cleaning out a hallway closet when I found it, an envelope tucked behind a stack of old blankets. My name on the front, in my grandmother's handwriting. My hand started shaking before I even opened it. Inside, there was only one thing, a business card. Laura Bennett, estate attorney, and below that, in smaller print, Whitmore Family Trust. I stared at it for a long time, because deep down, I already knew what it meant. They had planned something. Something my parents didn't know about. Something meant for me. And for the first time, I realized something clearly. I wasn't just being ignored. I was being protected. I didn't call the number right away. I kept the card in my wallet for 3 days, thinking, replaying everything, trying to understand. Then on the 4th day, my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Clara? Yes. This is Laura Bennett. I was your grandparents' attorney. I sat down immediately, because something in her voice told me this wasn't going to be a normal conversation. There are things you need to know before your 18th birthday, she said, and not much time. And that's where everything started to change, because 3 months later, my family planned a birthday dinner to celebrate me. What they didn't realize, it wasn't a celebration, it was a deadline, and I was already ahead of them. Laura Bennett's office was smaller than I expected. Not intimidating, not flashy, just quiet, organized, like the kind of place where everything mattered, even if it didn't look like it did. She didn't waste time. She closed the door, sat across from me, opened a folder, and said, your grandparents knew this would happen. No build-up, no soft introduction, just the truth. I didn't respond right away, because part of me already believed it. I just didn't want to. She turned the folder toward me. Inside were documents, stamped, signed, official. The cabin, she said, tapping the page lightly, was transferred into an irrevocable trust 6 years ago. 6 years, before my grandfather died, before any of those conversations at dinner, before my uncle started showing up with folders. They moved everything into it, she continued, the land, the structure, a savings account, investment funds. I swallowed, then said it like it was just another number, approximately 2.4 million. The room felt smaller, like the air had shifted, not because of the money, but because of what it meant. They didn't leave it to my dad, I asked. No, they left it to you. I stared at the paper. My name was there, clear, unavoidable. But if it's already mine, I said slowly, why does it matter what they're planning? That's when she leaned forward slightly. Because this was the part that actually mattered. It's yours, she said, but only when you turn 18. A pause. Right now, you have no legal control. And suddenly, everything made sense. The timing, the pressure, the way my dad kept saying, when you turn 18, we'll handle it. They weren't waiting for permission. They were waiting for control. There's something else, Laura said, and I could tell by her tone, this was the part I wasn't going to like. In the last month, someone has been making inquiries about the property title. My chest tightened. Who? She didn't hesitate. Your uncle. Of course it was. He's been checking the recorder's office, she continued, asking about ownership transfer procedures. I leaned back in my chair, because now it wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was real. They weren't thinking about selling it. They were already trying. What happens if they try? I asked. She didn't sugarcoat it. If they move fast enough, they could attempt to file a quitclaim deed. I frowned. That means they try to transfer ownership without verifying it properly. A pause. It wouldn't make it legally valid, but it could complicate things. How? It could delay you, force legal disputes, create pressure. And that was the word that stuck. Pressure. because that's exactly how my family worked. Not direct, not honest, just enough pressure until you gave in. They're not planning to ask you, Clara. They're planning to corner you. Silence, because I already knew she was right. There's one more thing, she added, and this time her voice changed slightly, more careful. Your uncle has already signed a preliminary agreement. My heart dropped. With who? A development company. The room went completely quiet. How much? 480,000. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was insulting. They were trying to sell something worth millions for less than a quarter of its value. And worse, they were doing it behind my back. So what do? I asked. She didn't hesitate. You wait. That wasn't the answer I expected. What? You don't confront them. You don't warn them. You don't change their plan. She held my gaze. You let them believe they're in control. A pause. Because the moment you turn 18, everything flips. She pulled out a calendar, circled one date, my birthday. Midnight, she said. That's when you become the legal beneficiary. And once that happens, she tapped the paper. You sign one document, and I file it first thing in the morning. What does that do? It locks everything. No sale, no transfer, no interference. Her words were calm, but the impact wasn't, because what she was really saying was, I had one chance, one moment, to stop everything. That night, I walked into the house like nothing had changed. My dad was in the kitchen, relaxed, almost cheerful. Hey, he said, got a minute? I nodded, because I already knew what was coming. We're planning something big for your birthday, he said. Of course they were. A dinner, family, something special. He nodded, then added, casually, we'll also go over some paperwork after. There it was, the plan, out in the open. But not really. Over the next few days, everything felt off. Too nice, too careful. My mom started checking on me more. My dad kept bringing up the future. My uncle came over twice in 1 week. Always talking quietly, always stopping when I entered the room, like I wasn't supposed to hear something, like I wasn't supposed to know. I walked past the garage. The door was slightly open. Voices inside, low, urgent. I shouldn't have stopped, but I did. And I heard this. We file it the morning after her birthday. My heart started pounding. She won't fight it, my uncle said. She doesn't even understand how it works. A pause. Then my dad's voice. What if she says no? Silence. Then we make sure she doesn't have a choice. That was the moment everything changed. Not the money, that sentence. Because that's when I realized this wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was control. I went to my room, sat on my bed, and stared at the wall for a long time. I could confront them. I could tell them everything. I could stop it right there. But then what? They'd change tactics, move faster, get smarter, hide it better, and I'd lose my only advantage. So I made a different choice. I stayed quiet. 3 days before my birthday, my mom sat next to me on the couch. Soft voice, careful tone. We should start thinking about the future, she said. I didn't respond. The cabin is expensive to maintain. Of course it was. We could sell it and set you up. There it was again. Not your choice. Our decision. I looked at her. I'll think about it. She smiled, relieved, like I had just agreed. The night before my birthday, my uncle showed up, unannounced. Big day tomorrow, he said. I nodded. We've got a great opportunity lined up, he added. Of course he did. Fast deal, good money. I looked at him. How much? Enough, he said. That told me everything. They had already decided, already planned, already acted, and in their minds, I was just the final step, a signature, a formality, something to get out of the way. That night, I couldn't sleep, not because I was scared. My entire life, in one moment, all I had to do was wait, because at exactly 12 a.m., I was no longer the girl they could control. And by 9 a.m. the next morning, they were going to realize they had just tried to steal something that was never theirs to take. The house was silent, not the peaceful kind of silent, the measured kind, the kind where you can feel people sleeping just on the other side of the walls without hearing them. I sat on my bed, fully dressed, phone in hand, waiting, because in a few minutes, I wouldn't just be turning 18. I would become something my family hadn't accounted for. Legally, untouchable. At 11:58 p.m., my phone lit up. Unknown number, but I already knew who it was. Laura Bennett. I answered without speaking. A calm voice came through. Are you ready? I looked at my laptop. The documents were already open, one click away. Yes, I said. A pause. Good, she replied. When the clock hits midnight, you sign, and everything changes. 12 a.m., the second it happened, I felt nothing dramatic, no explosion, no sudden shift in the air, just quiet. But it wasn't just another. I was no longer almost, I was now. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. One document, that's all it was. Acceptance of beneficiary rights. It sounded simple, almost harmless. But I knew better now. This wasn't paperwork. It was control. Over everything they thought they owned. I signed. Once. Then again. Digital confirmation. You are now the legal beneficiary of the Whitmore Family Trust. I stared at it. No emotion yet. Just wait. Because I knew what came next. The reaction. The realization. The panic. I didn't sleep. Neither did the house. At 6:47 a.m., I heard movement downstairs. Kitchen cabinets, footsteps, coffee machine, normal morning sounds, with a document he thought would change everything, and walk out realizing it didn't even count. At 15 a.m. they leave. I stood upstairs near the hallway window. I saw them, my father, my uncle, both dressed too neatly, both carrying folders, both pretending this was just another business deal. My father paused before leaving, looked at the house. For a second, I thought he might feel something. The cabin still belonged to them. I would sign later. I didn't understand the system. All wrong. Every single one. Because while they were planning, I had already changed the structure underneath them. Opea 59 a.m. County office. I wasn't there, but Laura was. She walked in calmly. Black folder. No hesitation. No emotion. Just precision. Then stamped them. Received. Recorded. Active. From that moment, everything my uncle was about to do became irrelevant. 9:11 a.m. they arrive. My uncle walked in first, confident, smiling, the kind of smile people have when they think they've already won. He placed the file on the counter. Quick claim transfer, he said. My family property, the clerk. What do you mean not eligible? She turned the screen slightly and pointed. Ownership is held under a registered irrevocable trust. Silence. My father stepped forward. There must be a mistake. No mistake, she replied. It was recorded 6 years ago. I found out later exactly what happened next. Because Laura recorded everything. My uncle laughed first. A short, confused laugh. Then came the sentence that ended everything. Any attempted transfer submitted this morning has been rejected. Rejected. Not delayed. Not pending. Rejected. My uncle stepped back, like the word physically pushed him. This is wrong, he said. This is our family property. The clerk didn't argue. She didn't need to. She just slid the printed record forward. My father looked at it, and I imagined that moment because it's the moment reality doesn't match expectation anymore. He saw my name, not theirs, mine. Kaguk. My phone rang at 9:18 a.m. I already knew who it was. I answered. Silence on the other end. Then my father's voice, lower than I had ever heard it. What did you do? I didn't answer immediately, because this wasn't anger. This was, you let us go there anyway? I stood by my bedroom window, watching nothing, just breathing. I didn't let you do anything, I said. You made your own decisions. Another pause, then my uncle's voice in the background, angry, raising. This isn't over. I almost smiled, because that's what people always say when it already is. By noon, everything started collapsing, because you cannot sell what you do not own. And worse, he had signed it anyway, based on assumption, not fact. Laura called me again that afternoon, calm as always. They've been notified, she said. Both of them. Also, the development company is considering legal action. I closed my eyes, not surprised, not shocked. Just done. Because this wasn't victory, it was just empty. My father was sitting at the table, staring at nothing. My mother wasn't speaking. No yelling, no confrontation. Just silence. The kind that replaces arguments when there's nothing left to argue about. My father finally spoke, not to me, but to himself. We should have checked. That was it. No anger, no denial, just acceptance. They weren't negotiating. They weren't controlling. They were reacting. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the one being moved. They were. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Lift not after that morning. Lift not after the silence. Because silence in a family like mine was never peace. It was pressure, waiting to explode. 20 at 10 p.m. My father was still sitting at the dining table. Same position, same stare. Like if he didn't move, none of this would be real. My mother stood by the sink, not washing anything, just standing there. And I realized something in that moment. They weren't mad at me. Not yet. They were trying to understand how they lost. Door slam. At 2:23 p.m., the front door slammed open, hard, loud enough to shake the frame. My uncle, face red, eyes wild, holding papers in his hand like they were evidence in a trial no one agreed to. "This is your fault," he snapped. "Not at me, at my father." Fess at the first crack. "You told me it was clear," my uncle said, and that's when the shift happened. Because my uncle wasn't here to fix anything. He was here to blame someone. The blame game begins. "You rushed it," my father finally said. "Quiet, controlled. You signed before checking." My uncle laughed. Sharp, bitter. "Oh, now it's my fault?" "You wanted the money too." Silence, heavy, unavoidable. "You said we'd handle it after her birthday." That word again. Handle, like I was a problem? Not a person. Bums, then my name entered the room. My uncle turned toward me, for the first time since he walked in, and his tone changed instantly, colder, sharper. "You knew, didn't you?" I didn't answer right away. Because now, this wasn't strategy anymore. "You let it happen," I said. And that's when everything snapped. "You manipulated this," he said. "You went behind our backs." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because of how backwards it was. "You tried to sell something that wasn't yours," I said. "You involved buyers. You signed contracts. And you're blaming me." Debheja, the word that changed everything. That's when my mother spoke. "You could have just agreed." Silence, not shock, not confusion, just stillness, because that sentence said everything. Not, "We made a mistake." Not, "We didn't know." But, "You should have made it easier for us." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't recognize her. It was never about misunderstanding, never about confusion. "You went through my bag," I said, my voice steady. Too steady. My mother froze. My father looked up. "What?" he asked. "Uncle Wade found the lawyer's card," I continued. Silence, then my father slowly turned toward her. "You did that." She didn't answer, and that was the answer. Everything shifted in that moment, because now this wasn't about the cabin anymore. "You went through her things?" he asked again, his voice louder now, angrier. "We needed to know," she snapped. "No," he said, "we didn't." That was the first time all day he defended me, and it came too late. "You think this is about privacy?" my uncle cut in. "I'm being sued." That landed, hard. My father turned to him. "What do you mean sued?" And just like for breach of contract, for misrepresentation, for everything. My father went pale. "How much?" My uncle didn't answer immediately, which told us everything. "Say it," my father snapped. 45,000 minimum. Silence. Pure silence, because now, this wasn't just a failed plan. This was damage, real damage. "My father," he asked. My uncle didn't respond. And again, that was the answer. "You dragged me into this," my father said. Quiet, but sharp. "No," my uncle fired back. "You were already in it." And just like that, they turned on each other completely. Standing there, watching them argue, watching everything fall apart, I understood something clearly. This wasn't my fault, the walk away. So I did something no one expected. I left. No yelling, no final word, no dramatic exit. Just walked upstairs, grabbed my keys, and walked out the front door. Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is stop participating. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just drove. And somehow, I ended up and that's when it hit me. This place was never just property. It was protection, not from strangers, from my own family. The line that stayed with me. I sat on the porch, staring at the lake, and I remembered something my grandfather once said. Some people see value, others only see price. And now I knew exactly what he meant. Because when I got back home later that night, was the one that would decide whether I still had a family at all. I didn't go home that night. Not immediately. Because I already knew. Nothing in that house was going to feel the same again. So I stayed at the cabin, sat on the porch, watched the water go still. And for the first time in days, my mind wasn't racing. It was quiet. not peaceful, but clear. Happened to the truth. I couldn't ignore. They didn't just try to sell the cabin. They tried to decide my future without me. They didn't ask. They didn't explain. They didn't hesitate. And the worst part, they expected me to accept it, like I always had. Farm sank. The morning after. I woke up early. The lake was calm, sun just starting to rise. Everything looked normal, like nothing had changed. But everything had, because I wasn't the same person who walked in here yesterday. And I wasn't going back as that person either. When I finally drove home, it felt different before, like something had already been decided. My father was sitting at the table. Same spot, but not the same man. He looked tired, older, like everything that happened yesterday finally caught up to him overnight. My mother wasn't there. My uncle definitely wasn't there. It was just us. I didn't sit right away. I just stood there, waiting, because this time I wasn't going to start it. He looked up the first honest sentence. I messed up. That was it. No excuses. No explanation. Just that. And somehow that made it heavier. Because this wasn't denial anymore. This was acceptance. Cabin, but I didn't let it slide. You didn't just mess up, I said. You made decisions for me. You went behind my back. You threatened to cut me off. Each word landed. Slow. Didn't defend himself. And that told me everything. He knew. Bumsbith. Then he said this. I thought I was helping. I almost stopped him right there. But I didn't, because I wanted to hear all of it. The business is failing, he continued. I was trying to fix things. With something that wasn't yours, I asked. Silence. Happened to the line that broke everything. I didn't think you'd say no. I didn't mean to. But I didn't think you had a choice. And that changed everything. Because that meant he never saw me as someone equal in that decision. Just someone who would eventually agree. Someone who would give in. Someone who would sign. The cabin isn't for sale, I said. Not louder. Not emotional. Just final. Not now. Not later. Not ever. He didn't argue. Things didn't magically fix themselves. That's not how stories like this work. My uncle, he got hit with everything. The lawsuit didn't go away. The penalty didn't disappear. And when the investigation into the paperwork started, it got worse. Way worse. Because trying to sell something you don't own isn't just a mistake. It's fraud. My father sold the business at a loss. And the house barely held together. Not physically, emotionally, because trust, once it breaks like that, doesn't come back the same. Happened in me. I moved out, not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly. Took what I needed, packed what mattered, and left. The cabin, of course, because for the first time, it wasn't just a place, my name on it. My grandfather's handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single letter, short, simple, but it explained everything. Clara, if you're reading this, it means we were right to trust you. Not because you're perfect, but because you understand the difference between value and price. Take care of this place. It will take care of you, Grandpa. I read it twice, then never about property. Never even about the cabin. It was about trust and who deserved it. My family thought they were planning my future, but the truth was, they were reacting to a plan that had already been made years before, one they couldn't control, one they couldn't break, one they couldn't take. And in the end, they didn't lose the cabin. They lost the version of me that would have given it to them. If you've ever had someone try to control your future without asking you, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments, and if this hit harder than you expected, subscribe, because the next story might hit even closer.